Biofriendly Podcast. It's the Biofriendly Podcast.
To your point, to last rodeos,
Yeah.
first rodeos,
Yeah.
nobody's really monitoring rodeos anymore.
No one's monitoring rodeo. Words do not come. You know why?
Monitoring rodeos.
They're not, because it's my first rodeo.
Yeah, it is your first. It's my last.
That's your last rodeo?
I'm retiring.
Oh, no.
I'm retiring.
This is a disaster.
No, but it's funny. You don't go into a job interview and they don't say, like, I see your qualifications. I can see you're proficient in Word. How many rodeos have you done?
Yeah.
What's my first rodeo? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, sir. We only accept people who are in their 12th rodeo.
12 rodeos at least.
Yes.
Well, welcome to the Biofriendly Podcast.
Yeah. Cheers.
You might, if you're just listening to the show and you're not doing just the audio portion, and you're seeing we have a guest. We have a guest today.
Can you believe it?
I know. I love it when we have guests.
It's the best.
It's like a party. And I realized I'm actually recording our guest without the gallery mode. I got to switch it over.
What?
Well, I know. So right now it's like the individual window mode. So I got to change it.
This is the kind of high quality preparation that you get on the Biofriendly
What
Podcast.
I want our guests to know is that we don't know what we're doing. You have to make it clear up front.
I'm gonna
vamp?
go ahead and vamp. With a really random, interesting family story that you'd never expect.
Okay.
But our guest today is Dr. Chandler.
Yes, Dr. Mark Chandler.
And what's exciting about that is my father's mother's maiden name is Chandler. I am a Chandler, at least a quarter Chandler. Yeah,
That's great.
100%. Yeah,
You
absolutely.
Guys might be family.
We totally could. And there's another Dr. Chandler in our lives, Dr. Adam Chandler, who was the math coach for my son's a math nerd.
Yeah.
So he's on a math team, and their coach is Adam Chandler, Dr. Chandler. So there's lots of Chandlers in my life. So
And
I'm
then
very
there's
excited.
Chandler Bing from Friends.
I mean, and then there's Chandler Bing from
who's not a
Friends.
real person at all.
So
Well, we welcome you, Dr. Mark Chandler. Mark Chandler is from Earthwatch. He's a conservation biologist. And why don't you kick things off by telling us a little bit, about your journey thus far, or a little bit about yourself?
So, starting from the sort of early beginning, and this, so I've been at Earthwatch now for 20 years, which seems
That's awesome.
which is great.
you mean people have cared about the environment for 20 years?
I know, and you'd think we'd be further along in terms of making a difference.
Much to the chagrin of all of us.
Yeah.
No, it's true. We were talking about rodeos before, and so it goes to show that I've been thrown off many times, but somehow they keep on
going
taking
back.
me. Yeah, they take me back for some reason. And so I'm a research scientist, and Earthwatch is an organization that does citizen science. So we look at developing projects where the public can work side by side with scientists to help collect data that leads to increased knowledge, but also can provide the participants, the public, with really powerful experiences, in the field, collecting data, seeing how science is done.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I've been thinking in terms of reflecting on this opportunity with you all. Is how did I get here? Where did it start? And it's the dark past, and I think maybe I let it on my head too many.
Good. That makes great podcast.
That's right.
So as far as I can go back, so I was reflecting. So I was actually born in India, and
wow.
I lived on 4 different continents by the time I was 5.
That's
which is
great.
Kind of
Global
unfathomable.
Chandler.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly. And I think my parents were trying to leave me, and somehow I always managed to jump back on the boat before they took the boat to the
You're
next
an international
place.
Home Alone story. They're just trying to fly away.
Exactly. I
love
think
it.
it was the inspiration for Home Alone.
Yeah.
And one of the stops was in Toronto, and in Toronto there are all these ravines that sort of snake from the plateau down into Lake Ontario, and a lot of the neighborhoods sort of cut into these ravines, and our house was right there, and so after school in kindergarten or first grade, we'd sort of play in the ravines and collect beer bottles and bring them in for money and things like that. I think that's where my engagement with nature started, was in these ravines that are in the sort of backyards of this metropolitan area.
Wow.
And I think from there I can just remember always thinking, well, I wanted to be a forester and somehow engage with nature. And then over time I realized that I had a strong curiosity about nature, and I wanted to be able to learn about it, and always with questions. But I also could appreciate that, bad things were happening in some way. And so, and I can see that sort of thread arc in my life of always wanting to ask questions on the one hand, but also make a difference as well. And I can see, whether it's the projects I've done or after my university degree, I went and worked at the New England Aquarium, which is kind of an unusual place for a scientist to be, but it provided me an opportunity to both present information to the public in an accessible way, but also do research and travel the world, go to Africa and study the fishes in Lake Victoria and so on. And I could see that my real sort of sweet spot or passion ended up being, bringing the public to this world of science, which gives us a lens into the world, but hopefully doing it on projects that are meaningful for both the people who are there as well as the scientists who are trying to discover, answers to some of the problems that we have, that we can make a difference.
Yeah, well, I'm beginning to have a theory that if you're born or live in Canada at any point in time in your life, you're going to become like a conservationist or an environmentalist. Like, it just seems to fall in that if you live in that beautiful place, you're going to be like why aren't we saving this? You know what I mean? We've had a couple Canadians on this show.
Something we say a lot, that if you spend a lot of time near nature, right? Like people who live near the ocean, they love nature because they want to protect the ocean. They want to keep want to keep those beaches clean. They want to keep the fish alive. They want to keep they're passionate about it. When people are near when they live near trees. Yeah. I think we've had guests in the past even before say that almost that exact same thing, that it was that they wanted to have something to do with the forest. Like it was important to them. And if you spend any time in some of these these beautiful forests that exist, particularly in North America, we got a lot of great ones. You get wrapped up in it, and you think, why don't we want to keep this? Like we need this. This is important. So I think that what's neat about Earthwatch is you're taking people into environments like that, but then you're also showing them science. So you're getting them really involved in what it takes to learn about our planet and to help our planet and to do active things to make it a better place, which is really cool. So I'm really glad we have you on.
Yeah, explanation. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What would be like the fastest way, if you were to be in passing conversation, to tell somebody what Earthwatch does, and you had to do it really fast? What would that?
The elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch. Yeah, that's what it's called.
The elevator pitch. It's about getting people outside of their comfort zone together with scientists to do real science. Yeah. And so it's about getting people on a project with a team of other strangers to work together quickly to be able to collect data that answers real research questions that make a difference in this world.
Yeah.
So we got kind of the... Oh, sorry, go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt. We got the what would you call it?
The mini version.
The mini version. Yeah, I was going to say
the intro version of Earthwatch.
I was going to say the for dummies version.
Oh yeah,
or something.
Yeah, but Earthwatch for dummies.
We met Gitta at a what was it? It was Green Biz. I think.
Green Biz back in February.
And we signed up for this this event she was having, which was to the trek to Mummy Mountain.
That's actually why we signed up for it. Is I got to be honest with it. Both Noel and I looked at each other and we're like, hey, if it says Mummy Mountain, count me in.
We're it.
And then we get there and we found out there were 0 mummies.
It was actually was the name of the mountain, was Mummy Mountain.
And so we were disappointed at first, but not once we started
until we had the experience. And then we were handed a bunch of tools
like measuring ground temperature, air temperature. So we were measuring
wind, all sorts of fun things. And so we all had everybody in the team had their project of what they had to do, and we had to get the depending on is it on a rock, is it on the ground, is it in the air, we're measuring all this stuff, and we came back with all this data, and it was neat, it was fun, and then getting I don't know, be involved with it.
I
was the For Dummies version. It was
Yeah.
the Idiot's Guide to Mummy Mountain, but it was intriguing. It was a good time. We learned a lot about just
Well,
even.
I was gonna say a part of the secret sauce really is that it's and that's sort of what we do behind the scenes.
Right.
So we take academic scientists who may be used to working with grad students and complicated equipment and highfalutin language, and find a way of bringing it to the public and onboarding people so that they start feeling comfortable taking measurements.
Yeah.
And what's amazing is within half a day, within a day, the quality data that comes from everyday citizens who participate can be as good or better as professional scientists.
Yeah.
And so we do that kind of testing. So and it goes to show, and it's not true for everything that people can do, but there's so many different ways that people can actually help collect information for the scientists. But one of the things I did, I was reflecting on. There's a great story, like your story going to Mummy Mountain has been found so many times, and there's this. So one of the things that Earthwatch does is we have these teams where scientists go to Kenya, they go to North Dakota, they go to Peru. Nice. You can study coral reefs, you can track zebras, a lot of really exciting things. And so often people get the catalog and they look and they think, where do we go? Where can we go? And we have teams for teens and, student groups. And so there's awesome. This one project that we have in North Dakota studying the largest sort of archaeological dig of mammoths there.
Yeah.
And so we need a lot of hands to get there to look through this. And student groups would go there. Anyhow, so I was talking to the scientist one day, and he was just telling me of one of the students had arrived, and clearly there was a mismatch between where he thought he was going and where he actually was going. So he shows up in, Bismarck or somewhere at the airport, and he's got his scuba gear. He's ready for the Bahamas or somewhere. And so the scientist sort of has to wrap his arm around him and say, we could probably just put this in the shed for this trip because you're not going to be using the scuba gear. So this kid was in tears. Like he thought he was going to be sending pictures back of swimming with sharks and mapping coral reefs.
Right.
But at the end of the week, the kid got back on the plane and he was in tears again because he had the best time in the world. Ending up somewhere we had no expectation he was going to end up, learning about the history of America, as being able to contribute real science, working as a team. And so there are many stories like that of this mismatch where you think you're ending up going in one area and suddenly
find yourself somewhere else. But it is worth it. It is worth it because you really learn something. You learn something about where you are, even something as silly as what are the temperatures on Mummy Mountain, and what's the difference between the temperature on a rock as opposed to the temperature in the shade, and then what is on the rock and what's around the shade and what can grow here and what can't grow here, and then finding out that your temperatures and the ones of most of the other people pretty much are within range. Like it's cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. This whole thing sounds like for me, if this program was offered when I was in high school, I would be drawn because I'd be like, this is like Indiana Jones experience, very archaeologist, like going and looking at the mammoth, bones, the remains, like that. Man, that just excites me so much.
Well, and to know that you're contributing to to science, like it's your work here is helping with the overall job of figuring out the histories of this planet.
Yeah,
absolutely, and it's a really nice balance of a lot of hard work, and a lot of science is boring grunt work. So it's taking those measurements over and over again in the middle of the day in the heat.
Right.
But then evening comes and you look out and, you had a guest not so long ago talking about, wanting that perfect wave and wanting to be that serene peace in the world. And you get those moments as well. So it's really a nice combination of bringing together that sort of sense of purpose, but also being able to feel at one with a place, with a group of people.
What's cool is on their website, and I highly recommend everybody go check out earthwatch.org, right? I'm remembering that right. When you go on their website, they have all these excursions that you can do, and we can get to some of those and who goes on those and whatnot in a minute. But in the choices and the search parameters, you can search the ease, or like down to like, this is going to be strenuous. So you can like select, I want kick me in the butt. Like I want to
really?
go on an Earthwatch that I will return a changed person, or you can go to the like, hey, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna help, but it's not gonna completely.
But really, I just want to stare at fish.
Yeah, really, I'm doing it for the Instagram pictures.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Right.
But so I wanted to point that out. Tell me a little bit more about how you decide to have.
If we wanted the Indiana Jones package, what would you recommend?
I want to have the one where I come home and I stare off in the distance, and I'm definitely a changed man afterwards.
Well, there's many different ways that you can be stretched out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
For some people, it's just actually getting in the water or going or being close to animals, wildlife.
Right.
But we have an amazing project in the Pyrenees in Andorra,
Nice.
and there you're starting off in an amazing hotel. And it's basically the bottom of a ski resort. But then the goal of the science is to sort of climb up through these mountains and be able to survey for birds, for small mammals, for insects, for wildflowers, and to see how climate change is going to impact where things can grow to and how fast they grow.
Interesting.
So there, what's nice actually is the way it's organized is that, for the people who, maybe less, akin to the sort of mountain goats, then there's an easier, flatter terrain. But then for people who really want to push themselves, there's the top level transects that you can get pushed up there.
Nice.
That's what I want to do. I want to push myself.
You want to be like in that Star Trek movie where
Yes.
Captain Kirk falls off of the where were they in Half Dome, and then Spock has to save him.
That's
with the
what I
special
want.
boots.
That's the kind of level of training I want. Here.
Nice.
That's
Well,
that's
actually,
amazing.
The project I would suggest is that we have a project up in Churchill, Manitoba. So
Okay.
it's the polar bear capital of the world. And
Bring it.
most of the teams are sort of in the summer, September. And so you do have some polar bears around, and people have to go with guns to make sure that you're protected, and you get to see the aurora borealis, and it's just amazing.
Oh, that would be
We
great.
also have a team in February where you have to bring the super suit that you're completely decked out. And the idea is to look at snow depth and to see how over years with climate change, snow depth, snowpack and so on is changing across the Arctic.
Yeah.
But there you get sort of strapped down on the back of a sled that's tied behind a skidoo, and you go out into the tundra for an hour.
I want to do this so
these
bad.
big holes to go and be able to put the stakes in to see what's happening with
see what we're
snow in February on the Arctic Circle.
I want to do that, and I'll bring some Coca-Cola for the polar bears. Just to
because Christmas is coming.
Christmas is
and
coming.
They need
It's
to
that
have
time
their
of year,
Christmas
right?
Coca-Cola. Absolutely,
Yeah.
'cause as we all know, polar bears love
everybody knows that.
Coca-Cola.
Everybody.
So I'm just curious. You're talking about climate change. When you do some of your research, are there ways to even look at what, previous ice age climate change, like the other direction, to see what happened there, or get any evidence of that, and sort of to be able to look into the farther back histories of
We've had projects that do that in different ways. So one of the most interesting ways you can do it is you take a core. So it's basically you drill into the ground several feet, yards, and then you pull out these tubes of mud and sediments, and then you can cut those. And as you look back, it's just like a tree rings. With a tree ring, you can go back in time looking at what's happening. But you do the same thing, and often you look at the bottoms of lakes or great places or seashores. You can see how the seashores changed. And so we had a project in Rhode Island. It was for teenagers as well, for students. So you'd go out and you'd help set these cores. You'd bring them out, and you'd be able to look at the past, to be able to look at how North America's changed over the last 15,000 years.
That's incredible.
that really is.
Yeah. So you've mentioned in some of these examples, you've mentioned students. So that begs the question: who goes on these kind of excursions? Like, what is available to the everyday person, the students? Like, how do people get involved? Is it broken up into different groups?
That's a great question. So we have.
Thank you.
It's the first time anyone said it. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that this was. So we have student groups that are really focused on teens, and so that's one segment. And so we have, if you go to our website and you have a teenager that really is keen on going out, we have student groups. We also fundraise, and we get foundation money to be able to get teams of teens, for example, throughout Los Angeles. It's a really amazing program to get kids who don't have the opportunity of going out with scientists into nature. Often it's the first time they get on a plane, and they show up in Acadia National Park or in Texas.
Wow.
And it truly is transformational for them. But then we also have the general public. And so we have roughly about 50 projects around the world where anybody can go and sign up and travel the world, help a scientist, and join one of these projects.
That's awesome.
That's so great.
We also
corporate Christmas parties in the Arctic
that's
Circle.
A great idea. There we go.
Look, if we're going to bring the Coca-Cola to the polar
we're
bears,
going to bring it to the polar bears.
we need to do it during the corporate Christmas party.
So that's actually a great point, because one of the I'd say unique aspects of Earthwatch is we actually partner with corporations to get their employees out to help on these projects.
Oh, very cool.
It actually can be tricky, because it does sound a bit crazy, if you go to your boss and say, hey, I need a couple of weeks to be able to go to the Bahamas to study sea turtles. They look at you askance. But actually we had a team of folks from Salesforce who decided to go out on a project together. Salesforce
I'm familiar with Salesforce, yeah.
Is a great company, and they really support their employees giving back in some way, and this was a way of giving back. But we have we work with several corporations where they would like their employees to learn more about the environment.
Yeah.
So these are corporations who see that the world is changing, and they want their employees to be ready to respond to that changing world, whether it's climate change and risk, whether it's fresh water, whether it's loss of biodiversity. And so what we do is we work together with the corporation, and their employees will go out and help learn about climate change and measure what's happening, so that they have the tools when they go back to their business to be able to think about the business operations and their personal choices in a different way. So part of it is a learning opportunity for the employees to understand how they can become more green and support sustainability issues. But they also learn about the issues on the ground. So they help, volunteer and contribute to, collect data on climate change in the Arctic's edge, or what's happening with fresh water, at the same time as they can bring something back with their to their corporation. So
yeah,
that's great.
Very cool program. Yeah.
So while you mentioned that climate change on the Arctic's edge, I mean, what are you finding in all these trips? Like, is it over? Do we just pack up our bags and go
Mars?
Home and
we head to Mars?
Is this the last rodeo?
Yeah. Back to the rodeos again, man.
Got to get back on that.
Yeah.
There's stories of both sides. So there's clearly change is happening, and so part of it is a matter of adapting to that change. So accepting that sort of like fires in California, it's not going to stop anytime soon. So how do we adapt to that in some meaningful way? Right. But then also how can we mitigate? How can we stop some of the contributions there?
Right.
Several of the projects are looking at changing in tree line, and so what we're finding up in the Arctic's edge is that some of the trees are able to migrate faster, and some tree lines are not migrating. And so now we can plan differently to sort of say, okay, these animals are going to be able to keep up, and whereas these habitats will be lost. And the same thing, back to our friend the polar bear, it's understanding with the change in sea ice, are the polar bears going to have somewhere to go to be able to hunt, and go onto the ice there.
Right.
So the research is definitely helping to advance knowledge, but also contribute to management and policies to make a difference.
Right. Well, you're right, because there's obviously we need to do everything we can to help mitigate, because the less damage we do, the better. But there is that other side of it, and I'm glad you brought that up. The other side of some damage has occurred, and will certainly occur. And what do we do to try to help as much as possible to get as many species to survive as we can, to make things easier for ourselves to continue, and so on.
Absolutely.
That's great. I mean, that's a real another great reason to go on an Earthwatch voyage, man. Help figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the projects that you made me think about a little bit earlier on is and this I think is an interesting and important point. Is often we think that nature has to be at the Arctic's edge or going to the Bahamas or somewhere.
Right.
One of the projects that we've started to do over the last 10 years is actually do nature in cities and do the environment in cities. And one of the projects that we've done, close to where you all are at, is in the city of Ontario.
Sure.
And there's a community garden there, and it's serving a disadvantaged community. It's close by the airport, and the community garden was actually using a lot of water.
Yeah.
And the city was providing the water for free, but the city was sort of saying, hold on, this is expensive, and how can we manage the water a little bit differently?
Right.
So we did a citizen science project where we worked together with the community gardeners for them to be able to do what you did on Mummy Mountain.
Mummy Mountain, yes.
Mummy Mountain. And that's starting to figure out, how much water were they using, measuring how much water they used, and then to be able to, by doing the science of it, they could actually self-regulate and start using less water.
Put the water where they needed it.
To use exactly the water when they needed it. Whereas before, because they weren't sure how much water they needed, they tended to overwater. So we were able to work together. But one of the things that I thought... Science, exactly. Science in the hands of community members.
Yeah.
But some of the things that were really important is that this was science in nature, in a community garden, in the middle of an urban sprawl. This wasn't going up to the mountains or down by the coast. Right. There are opportunities for engaging in nature, in the environment, in people's backyards, in community gardens. And I was so impressed by the community members and their love of nature, their love of gardening and wanting to do something. So I think, we can't only think about nature as being something that's far away, that's distant, that you've got to have resources to get to. There are opportunities of engaging with nature and doing something in people's backyards, in downtown LA.
That's a perfect segue into what I was going to ask next anyway, which is obviously because of COVID, the international travel and everything about getting out there has become more complicated. People aren't flying. We're staying, within the confines of our country. So I wanted to know how much Earthwatch has adapted to that. But it sounds like that this is the strategy, the program that was already coming into place, this things that you can do in your communities and backyards is kind of where we need to focus our efforts right now until things maybe normalize or open up again. Is that accurate?
That's absolutely accurate. And we were either lucky or smart or probably mostly lucky in the sense that we had really started shifting a lot of focus on being able to work in people's backyards and developing ways of working together with communities without having to be in place.
Yeah.
Now, being together as a team in the environment is really powerful, but we need to be able to do both.
Yeah.
And so, absolutely, we've got these programs in in cities. And actually, one of the projects that I think is very exciting is that one of the corporations that we've been partnering with is a corporate partner called Ernst & Young, or it used to be called Ernst & Young. It's a big accounting firm, consulting firm.
Yeah.
And now it's known as EY.
Well, you got to modernize.
You got to get kids abbreviate everything these days.
They don't know that many letters.
You can't throw Ernst and Young at people,
No.
Yeah.
And anyhow, they have lots of very funny stories about how they got from where they were to where they are, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But one of the programs that we do together is really engaging their employees to not just go on a project and collect data, but to also give back their professional skills on site. And before COVID, they would go out to coffee fields and help the local cooperative figure out how to get the most money by selling coffee at a sustainable price, as well as doing the science there.
Very cool.
But now, because of COVID, the project that we're going to do, and it's going to be in a month's time, is that they have a one-day volunteering day for all of their employees. And in the U.S., they're going to go out and take pictures of air quality at each of their offices. So they have 80 offices across the U.S., and we're working collaboratively so that they can help collect citizen science about air quality in a very distributed way all across the continent to be able to help scientists figure out better what's happening with air quality. So it's a really nice partnership where they're able to learn about science and do something in their backyards, at their homes if they're working from home, and still be active and contributing to citizen science in some way.
Well, I thought that all accounting firms and all accountants were just nerds.
Yeah, but they're not. Apparently they want to go out and help measure air pollution.
They're cool, they're fun, they do neat things, and they even shorten their names.
That's right, to E and Y.
I mean, come on, forget about it. So all right, do you guys even spend time in the unpopular nature, like the desert?
So one of the yes, the short answer is yes.
No, it's funny because I like, so Jacob and I and our friend Clayton, we have this, for whatever reason, we love the desert, which is we found to be unusual.
Yeah, we go out into the desert on excursions and trips. And,
right, and people are like, desert? Why are you going to? There's nothing in the desert, but if there's something about it. You go out there, it's that same tranquil, cool. You watch the sunset and you're. It's breathtaking to me, but others don't find it so. And I wonder if there's a desire to go out there and do any exploration in the desert, and also if you found anything interesting there.
Yeah.
So we had a project in Joshua Tree National
great
Park.
area.
Love it.
And so there, the research question was to try to understand how and where the sort of baby Joshua trees were taking hold, because with climate change, the dryness and the humidity is going to shift and so on. So they wanted to know, is the Joshua tree going to be able to follow climate change?
Okay.
And so how can we look at recruitment of young Joshua trees across altitudinal gradients, and space to be able to survive. At the same time, there's all these transects getting, lizards and
Sure.
plants and so on. So, and we weren't sure at the beginning whether people would be, going, in the summertime to Joshua trees to go and get out there in the heat. It's people love it. It's
great.
I think that and Joshua Tree is truly a special place, and so
it's mystical.
It is. We've had projects, also archaeological projects, in the Southwest, and that's also, there's something about, and one of the key things is obviously we bring tarps. So if you're out there in the middle of the day, you get some shade. We make sure people are well hydrated, and there's definitely a sort of buddy system to make sure that people don't get too much heat and so on. So it's all within the safe regions, but desert projects, surprisingly or not, are quite popular with people.
Oh, wow, that's good.
That's cool.
Okay.
You're not alone.
Well,
Nice.
good to know. Good to know. Well, next time we go to the desert, we'll have to bring some scientific tools to do some measuring.
Yeah.
Digging.
Yeah,
And,
do some
and,
digging.
That's it. No, Joshua trees are. I'm always surprised at how big they can get. Like
Yes.
when you see the big forest of them everywhere, you get this idea that they're just kind of almost cactus like things. But man, when you really get out there and look at them, they're trees.
Yeah.
They are.
They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, so you can go in any direction with this, really, but you've been at this for 20 years and probably even longer outside of Earthwatch. But do you have you can go the funniest story, the most intense story, the most memorable story of a adventure that you've been on. So you really, I'm giving you the freedom to go whichever one you want, but
just to prove him wrong, give us your most boring story.
don't you dare. Don't you dare.
Any direction.
No.
He said any direction.
No. I want the one that Mark tells, at dinner parties, hangouts with friends, sitting around a fire, and he goes, well, this one time, I rode a bison. I don't know. Just something like that.
Well, I was thinking there's two stories that stand out, and the one that is perhaps the most memorable in some ways was the one where I felt it was the closest to dying I've ever been.
Oh boy,
bring it! That's great. Yes.
So it was actually at the beginning of my time at Earthwatch, and I came to Earthwatch to help set up these what we call conservation research initiatives. So these were working with the community to ask the community, what are the questions that you want scientists to answer? And so we would, land. So we had one in Belize, for example. We worked in southern Belize to work with the fishing communities to understand what were their questions, and then we set up some research questions, and we got volunteers to help answer those research questions and bring them back to managers and so on. So that was the model, and we wanted to choose a location like that in Africa. And so I was, in many ways, it's an amazing job, to be able to travel Africa looking for places for projects.
Yeah.
And one of the sort of biodiversity hotspots is the Okavango Delta, which is in Botswana. And it's this enormous wetland full of tall papyrus. So imagine, these tall reeds that are 12 feet high in this enormous, swamp. And it's just teeming with elephants and hippos and crocodiles. And it's just like, it's
awesome.
truly a wildlife paradise.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we did is go out on a boat to check it out. And so we're going on this big sort of flatbed boat. Imagine sort of maybe you can think of the Everglades, where you're sort of going around curves and the tall reeds. And so we're in this boat and we're zipping along. But because you're going in these sort of narrow corridors, you can't really hear what's coming.
Right. Or see.
Or see or anything. And so we're going along and it's beautiful. It's evening and the birds are flying overhead and maybe the guide sort of told us, exaggerated tales of how big the crocodiles were and the hippos. Anyhow, we come around the corner and this big other boat is coming the other way, but it's so narrow that we're going to have a head-on collision. Oh. And so there, I can just see this boat coming towards me, and the crew starts jumping off of our boat into the water.
Oh, what?
And I keep on going back in my mind, like, why didn't I do something more? Anyhow, I ended up being pinned by the prow of the other boat against the seat I was sitting on, and I had this big bruise in the middle of my chest. I could just imagine, reflect on those last few seconds of
oh my God,
what to do. Anyhow, I'm partly embarrassed by not wanting to. I should have just gone left or right. But just
well, I mean, to be fair, you were told about these behemoth animals in the water. So your instinct is like, well, I could either try my luck out here or get eaten out there. So, exactly. I mean, it's a fair question to ask.
Also a new environment. It's a whole different situation. It's not like every day you're boating around and then someone's boat comes flying at your face.
Right,
I mean, that's a fairly unusual circumstance.
No, exactly.
I think you get a pass on that one for nearly dying. Yeah,
sure.
So anyway.
And you didn't die, which means you were right.
Didn't die. You made it. Exactly. Otherwise, I would have felt really bad about making him tell that story. If he had died, I would have felt
this
horrible.
interview would have been really different.
This would have been the Weekend at Bernie's interview.
Yeah.
Just
exactly.
Mark
if you go to the other mummy mountain, tuned somewhere.
Yes. They take us up there and be like, "This is where Mark Chandler is."
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think that's going to be my new thing. You know how every show has, when you have a guest on, I got to come up with a name for it, but it's like the cocktail hour story. The when you have a guest, what's the one story that you tell at that specific moment, right?
Yeah.
Because I did it to James too on the surfing thing.
Yeah.
I was like, what's that story, right?
Yeah.
So
what's the story that wins the dinner party?
Yeah. Where do you dominate the conversation? Because I feel like that one would everybody would be like, and then. Yeah. Why didn't you jump?
Yeah, it would be
exactly.
Yeah, it would be hours of fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're kind of here at the end of the podcast, but I wanted to give you a chance to, if there was any other ground that we didn't cover.
How do people find out about an adventure to go on, and how can people participate and be part of this experience? How can they find Earthwatch?
So we have a website and we have a list of projects that you can go on. Right now, because of COVID-19, we're having to put a pause on all the teams fielding.
Sure.
We're hoping in the not too distant future, we actually had a team last week go up to Acadia to see, could it be ready to accept teams? And the answer is probably in the not too distant future, we could have in some places opportunities to go out on expeditions.
That's great.
Which is great. The other thing I would like to mention is that the world of citizen science has just really exploded over the last 20 years. Earthwatch was one of the pioneers. We started 50 years ago.
50 years? 50 years?
50 years, yeah, exactly.
So I thought environmentalism was only 20 years old.
That's just how
50
he
years
joined
old.
20 years ago, but Earthwatch started 50 years ago.
Wow. It's amazing. No, it's a crazy story, and it's a beautiful story of of really, right around the time of the first Earth Day, the creation of the EPA,
Right.
Endangered Species Act. There's all that sort of energy to do something after the environmental, Rachel Carson raised awareness and so on. And so someone came up with the idea, hey, people want to go out and travel and they want to help in some way, and how can we bring scientists and people together? And Earthwatch was born.
It's a great idea.
But recently there's a lot of other citizen science out there, and there's a website called SciStarter, which has a whole menu option of many different projects that you can do in your backyard and so on. So you don't have to wait for Earthwatch to start. You should definitely consider an Earthwatch expedition when we're up and running. But have a look. There are probably dozens of citizen science projects where you can get involved and help science and learn about the world around you and contribute just about anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I love the phrase citizen science.
Citizen science.
Citizen science.
And I love that this is obviously truly a passion, because you're plugging the enemy. I mean, there you go. He's saying go to other people's expeditions.
Right. I know.
That tells you this is truly
it's about it.
It's about the love of it.
I love it.
Well, and if I can add, I'm probably you could. It depends on how long you want to go. So the other thing that I think is really interesting and important is that, the term scientist was actually coined in the early 1800s. And they had people doing all sorts of other things, but they didn't have a term for someone who, as a professional, collected data and tried to make sense of the world and published that. And so the term scientist was created, and then it became this sort of real thing around academics.
Yeah.
And it became this very professional thing, and the ivory tower idea was created.
Yeah.
And what's really revolutionary about that idea of citizen science is not just citizens collecting data for scientists, but it's an opportunity for citizens to start defining the research questions they have.
Right.
So if you're somewhere and you want to know, is my water polluted? How do you go about answering that question? And do you have to wait for a scientist to come and answer that question for you, or can you take initiative and do it? So the idea of citizen science is trying to turn, science for the sake of the people rather than just,
I love
people
that.
helping scientists.
Yeah, that is so cool.
I feel like from a very unreliable source somewhere deep in my memory that is probably inaccurate.
Yeah.
That Einstein said something like, "All you need to be a scientist is curiosity," or something like that. Maybe.
Yeah.
And that captures it. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It was either Einstein or Dick Van Patten.
Was it Dick Van Patten who told me
Or
that? No.
Kierkegaard. Anyway, I can't remember. I'm sorry, Mark. I interrupted you with a stupid joke.
That's what we do.
Perfect.
That's unfortunately, Sorry about. Well, that's terrific. No, that's true. I mean, and I think that. I think it's awesome what you guys are doing. I can't wait till you can get back to it. And it was such a pleasure to have you on the show. You're a lot of fun. We're gonna have to you back.
Yeah, definitely.
To tell more stories and get us into more trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're ever in LA, let us know.
Yeah, and
for
actually,
sure.
we're gonna at some point here, we're gonna go ahead and sign up for an expedition, something that's
We have to.
not E for easy, but
but
hard for hard. We're gonna go for the crazy one.
Yeah,
and we'll bring cameras.
Yeah, we'll definitely set up a show in the field. That'd be great.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll get out there and we'll have some fun.
That would be such great programming. Sending the two biofriendly guys on some crazy excursion, and then we can document the whole thing. I think everybody would love
all
that.
of the trouble.
Yes.
Us naked and afraid,
Naked and
alone
afraid.
in the snow.
That's right.
I love it. Well, you can, if you'd like, you can end the call now, or you can sit here as we try to figure out our sign off.
We have our sign off, and it's totally optional.
Sometimes
Okay, I've heard the sign off already.
Thanks for joining us. And
thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah,
All right, take care.
See you, Mark.
Be safe.
That was so fun.
that was great.
Speaking of which, I'm going to need a couple weeks off to go to the Bahamas to study sea turtles.
Yeah, well, if it's for science, then I can't say we could never stop you. That would be rude. That would be awful.
I really do. Jokes aside, I really do. When the world kind of normalizes and we can do things like that again, I think you and I doing one of those trips would be outstanding.
I think that we're going to have to expand the show into that kind of thing where we with some of our best guests, when they bring up something, to go do whatever that thing is.
Right.
And to be, yes, absolutely.
Well,
and to show the world what it's like.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. And we're dads, so I'm not going to take us out to some place where we're going to get eaten by wolves. But I think
we should absolutely go somewhere where we can be eaten by wolves. No, because we have to believe in
We
the
have to believe
Earthwatch people
that they would keep us
that
safe.
they're going to keep us alive.
That would be safe.
Even if we don't know how to stay alive.
Let's put that on Mark next time we see him. Be like, look, we told our wives
We
that
promised.
if we come face to face with a den of ravenous wolves, that you
Mark.
would keep us
You,
safe.
Mark, personally.
We believe that, okay? He was such a great guest. Wasn't he?
I loved him.
I
loved him. And what a great last name.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
It really is. Chandler Bing.
Yeah.
I actually did not know that.
You didn't know that I'm the Chandler?
That you were part Chandler.
That's it. I'm part Chandler, man.
I love it. Yeah. Well, again, big thanks out to Dr. Mark Chandler from Earthwatch. And we already said the website, but again, earthwatch.org. We will link it on all of our socials.
And
So
when they're
go
back
check
in
it out.
action, we'll try to give a shout out at that point too, so you can go. I mean, it's COVID's kind of getting in the way of our promotion for these
It's
companies.
really harshing my planetary buzz.
Right?
Right? It's just...
Yeah.
So we've been your beacon of light in a gloomy environment.
Featuring greater parasympathetic nerve activity.
More than just charismatic megafauna.
Dolphins don't quit.
Nature is perfect. Look at eggs.
We are y'all inclusive.
Don't mess with Smokey on this show.
What's our new one?
I think that was it.
Don't we have a new one?
Did we add one?
Last week.
Dang it!
We did.
I don't remember.
We added one last week.
Oh, we probably did.
It was something about...
It was probably the best one we've ever done. I actually today...
Something about boogers?
Today I went back and listened to year one.
Yeah.
And I listened to sound years ahead of the competition.
That's a good one. We are sound years ahead of the competition.
So glorious, so handsome.
So handsome.
It was another one. But I was listening back. I was like, man, these feel like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
That we did all those.
I can't believe we forgot the one we came out. It's a good one, too.
Is it a good one?
Yeah.
I
You know, it's
can't
something
remember.
about wearing a cape. No. Something like maybe we go dancing.
You were going to take me dancing?
I was. I don't know. We'll look it up.
We'll look it up. We always say that, and then we don't. And then we get in
don't,
the
and
same.
then it gets shorter.
And we get in the same predicament. I love, by the way, when we said, "Do you want to stay on for the
like,
sex?" He's like,
no, I've seen the sign off. I
I've
want
listened to a
nothing
couple episodes, and I've heard
do.
you struggle your way through this
sign
one
off.
too many times. This year.
Oh, goodness.
So with that.
It's the Biofriendly Podcast. It's the Biofriendly Podcast.